Sex, religion, and politics are the three things you're not meant to talk about in polite company, but we're South African and that just goes nowhere. So I'm joined in studio by Lisa Hartley and Mvelasi Papeta, who are going to talk with me about sex, religion, and politics, like only South Africans can. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having us on.
Thanks. So, how's your week been? It's Monday, so how was the weekend?
The weekend was very relaxing, thankfully.
Good.
Yeah.
Lisa?
Worky. It was very worky.
Tell us about your work. It's absolutely fascinating. What are you doing?
I started a company a while ago, which I took on full-time last year in August. I resigned from my job, so that should give you an indication of the last time I drew a salary. And I sell plasters, like normal sticky bandages, for different skin tones, and I'm trying to get that off the ground at the moment.
I think you'll agree, Mvelasi, it's about freaking time.
Yes, yeah. I remember when Lisa first told me about this idea a couple of years ago, and I was like, that is amazing. Somebody really should get on that.
And he got one of our PR packs, so he has samples.
Brilliant. So this is the thing. South Africans never ever heed to the rules of what is supposed to be polite conversation. I mean, sex, religion, and politics is basically something that we talk around our dinner tables every single night, and so I thought that perhaps you guys would be willing to chat a bit about sex, religion, and politics with me today.
Sure.
Yeah.
So we'll kick it off with our first story on sex, and that's got to do with Prince Andrew, who is being accused of sleeping with a woman who was underage at the time. She says that she was a sex slave, which is absolutely horrific to a man who's known as a pedophile. So, I mean, that story is just horrific, but what I want to focus on is CNN this morning. They say, what's the point of Prince Andrew and what exactly does he do?
That's exactly what I was going to ask.
Right.
I think the bigger question is, I mean, obviously the story is horrific, but the question we also need to be asking is, why do we still have monarchies?
Yeah.
Right.
Really? It's 2015.
I actually read that article as well, and there were a number of articles and media things that happened and following the allegations being released. A lot of people saying like, well, Prince, and this article, the CNN article, makes this whole story is like, well, if you actually do some digging, you find out Prince Andrew is doing this amazing work, blah, blah, blah. To me, it just sounds like spin from the palace. They're like, look, he's not that bad. Yeah, no, because now all of a sudden people are asking, why do we like subsidize this man's lifestyle?
Exactly.
He's somebody who's hanging around with known pedophiles. A man actually went to jail. And after he was released from jail, Prince Andrew spent time with him again. And now this is all coming up again. And Prince Andrew's had problems with the press in the past. So for him, this is not doing any good for his public profile or the palaces for that matter.
Right. I mean, I'm a big fan of Kate Middleton. I think she's beautiful and awesome, but that's because my tax money is not going towards her.
Exactly.
It would be a different story if my rands were going to spend on her lifestyle. So it's 2015. Is there a place for monarchies, royal families?
I don't personally think so, and I don't think that they're going to be around for much longer. A lot of people disagree with me on that, but I think by the time we're retired, proper age, not dream age, I think they might not be around any longer in your countries, in your sort of first world countries. That's just my opinion. But I just think they're unnecessary. I mean, think of the South African outcry against big expenditure like in Nkandla. Now imagine if we had that permanently, not in Nkandla, but Buckingham Palace. I don't think we would stand for it.
No.
Well, we do have like something similar to it. We subsidize the royal families for the Temple royal family, the
That's true.
Goodwill Zwelithini, who every once in a while pops up and says something ridiculous. Like, when was the last year he said something about gays? Oh, we don't, I don't condone this thing of gays. I can't remember exactly. And I was like, well, I don't condone this thing of you being a royal person.
Yeah, I don't condone my tax money going to you. So yeah, it's such a weird situation, this Prince Andrew thing. And of course, I mean, if this woman has been abused, which it sounds like she was hanging out with a pedophile, it's absolutely awful. But a lot of the court records revolve around her having sex with the prince at 17. So basically, you know, if you are an American citizen and you have sex with someone at 17 years old, and that person's older, that's prosecutable. You could go to jail.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering what you guys think about the legal age of consent for sex. A 17-year-old, I think, is probably able to make an informed decision. So where do we draw the line here?
In this case, it's a bit difficult because the question is that she says she was being trafficked. That's her allegation. Now, if you're a 17-year-old and you hook up with a 19, 20-year-old, 21-year-old, then it's consensual. Then it becomes a bit of a grey area. Technically, it is still illegal if I hadn't heard the law correctly, but it is a bit of a grey area because 17-year-old you can't entirely say, well, they have no they have no like agency. They can't make these decisions for themselves.
Exactly.
But at the same time, the law has to draw a line at somewhere and just say, okay, this is wrong and that's right, because you can't look at every single case and nitpick and like everything has shades of grey. The law has to be the law, and it's up to you. As the person who's older, you just got to know you can't do that.
I think that's probably it. If you're older and you're trying to hook up with somebody who's underage, think about what you're doing.
Yes, but this is also, like Melissa said, this is a very different story. If she's being trafficked, then you've got a whole other level of illegality happening here. You also have to wonder, though, in my opinion, not that, I mean, obviously, anyone doing this, it's a horrific thing, but being as high profile as that, what did you think was going to happen?
Yeah.
Well, this is what always happens whenever these people who are famous and rich and they get caught up in these things, like, but everyone knows who you are. What did you think was going to happen? How did you not think this is not going to blow up in your face?
Exactly.
My favorite thing through this all actually has been Sarah Ferguson going on American news networks, slamming these allegations left, right, and center. And she's sort of fallen from grace from the monarchy, but that does not stop her from trying to get in front of a TV camera.
I was watching Project Runway the other day and she popped up. And I was like,
Exactly.
oh, look, Sarah Ferguson.
So, I mean, do you think that as South Africans we're a little too uptight, moving away from this topic, when it comes to talking about sex? Lisa?
I don't think we're too uptight. I think we still have a lot of very conservative people in South Africa, because a lot of people are still very religious in this country. So I think we're a bit more conservative. I mean, I heard something very interesting the other day. The percentage of people who would list themselves as Christian in America versus the UK. The UK is very, very low. America is very high. And I think we tend more towards America. And that does very often come with very conservative views on many things. So I think we have conservative views, but I don't necessarily think we are scared to talk about it.
I think that is actually a very good point. I was going to disagree, but you actually make a very good argument. We do talk about it, but when we talk, the opinions that we express tend to be more conservative than other opinions. Let's put it that way.
I don't know if you guys saw the video that was doing the rounds recently, where they filmed parents telling their kids about the birds and the bees. It was absolutely hilarious. And it reminded me that my mom told me, she's going to kill me for saying this on camera, that when a daddy kisses a mommy, never anybody else, it has to be a daddy kissing a mommy, then he plants a seed in her stomach and she falls pregnant. I spent years thinking that a baby grows in your digestive tract. So, I mean, do we need to be talking to our kids more realistically about sex?
Yes.
I think so. Yeah. My parents just skipped that part of my education
altogether.
I got to boarding school in grade 8, not knowing
Lisa.
this stuff. And I was like, oh.
That is actually funny. It is exactly
well, biology is going to be a really interesting subject this year. And I had no idea about any of that stuff at all. Like,
I remember
nothing.
It was in standard 5, which is grade 7, that we did sex ed. It was them putting a tape in and the teacher walking out and just leaving us.
Oh, we did do a tape, but it didn't get to the end.
Yeah.
It was just sort of like, don't get into cars with strangers and don't let them touch you. But there was no actual education on how reproduction happens.
Yeah.
So maybe that's something we need to relook at. I often wonder if when I have kids one day, how I'm going to broach this topic with them. And right now, my go-to is my husband's going to deal with it. I don't know if I can deal with it. But I suppose it's something that you've got to...
I think you do have to address it. I think there's no harm in being quite upfront about it. Not in a crass way, not in a dismissive way, but these are the facts. This is how it happens.
I think it's most important to actually, you don't just kind of, when your child hits 11 or 12 and suddenly be like, okay, now we have to have this talk. Something you need to do from, age appropriately, obviously, but from when they're kids and as they're growing up, it's something that you talk about again and again and again. So that they're not this huge barrier when they're suddenly at an age where puberty hits and you're like, oh, well, where do we even begin?
And the danger often, I think, is that kids who do know about this stuff come up to other kids and they tell them. Oh, yeah. But in that way that only children can, they leave out the very important stuff and they change things, and it's a very weird version of the truth. And they tell the child that, and then that's the truth they're left with, which is not always a very good thing. I say this as though I know anything about children. But
well, I mean, all three of us, obviously experts on parenting until it actually happens. Now, a little while ago, I interviewed a woman called Kim Smith, who's a menstruation activist. And this is basically the point, that there's so much weird taboo and misinformation around women just getting their periods, that what she wants to do is get into schools and explain to girls, it's not gross, it's not dirty. like sex, it's pretty normal, you're gonna be fine, you're not gonna die. But like you said, it's those weird stories about how if you bleed for too long, you're definitely going to die, and how you're not allowed to touch a boy if you're on your period because he'll go blind. I mean, all sorts of ridiculous things that are pretty much going around this country.
And I think that's especially important as well because there's a very negative feeling about menstruation from men. It's a gross thing, it's a dirty thing, you can't talk about it because that's disgusting, and it shouldn't be that way. And it's also very important because there are still countries where women are sort of hidden away during their cycle every month. And I read a story not so long ago, end of last year, about a woman who froze to death because there's a little outhouse for that time of month where they have to sleep. I mean, this was in like Yemen or somewhere, and she froze to death. And I mean, that's the kind of thing that you have to talk about. It can't be a dirty thing any longer because that is still happening in this day and age.
And the thing is, as much as those stories are terrifying and horrible, like when you hear these things happening in underdeveloped countries, it's still the issue around menstruation and that it's a terrifying thing that it still crops up. When Hillary Clinton was running for president, there were a lot of subversive kind of scary ads saying like, do you want a woman? Like, when she's on that time of the month, is she going to hit the nuclear button? And these are
hashtag everyday sexism.
Exactly.
Yes.
Those
And
kind of things.
you're right, the big stories are terrible, but it's the everyday stuff that makes it such a big, global, ongoing, everyday issue.
That poor woman. Hillary Clinton deals with more crap than I think anybody actually understands. I love her.
So do
I'm
I.
a big fan of Hillary. Well, when she was running against Barack Obama, I was a Clinton fan.
Oh,
Really?
Yeah, I wanted Hillary to win.
Wow.
Did your friends rag you when she didn't?
Yes, they did a bit. A lot of people were like, and I was like, okay, it's fine.
It's Hillary's time now.
Yeah, this time round, yes.
Absolutely.
Hillary 2016.